The Jared Dillian Show.
I'm Jared Dillian. This is The Jared Dillian Show. If you want to call to talk about your money, please call 844-305-7800. That's 844-305-7800. This is The Jared Dillian Show. So there's a bunch of crazy, obviously there's a bunch of crazy stuff going on. Things are crazy. I was just talking to one of my friends in New York. I was on Bloomberg this afternoon, and so the way Bloomberg works is Bloomberg is a news service in addition to providing market data. And so you have like this ticker that has all this news that goes scrolling by. And then every once in a while there'll be one that comes out in red. So the Bloomberg editors decide which ones are the important ones, and it comes out in red. And I'm serious. Like there was a red news headline about like FEMA getting 100,000 body bags. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? I don't know what's going on because I haven't left my house in a really long time, except to like get in the pool. And like the world is crazy out there. And actually, you know what's funny is I haven't watched the national news because the news is on while I'm on the radio. And but I've been watching local news. But the local news like around here it's Charleston news, and you know, it's about the virus, but it's not as dire as it is in New York. So it's bad out there. I want to talk about the money side of it. And we just did a stimulus package that was $2.2 trillion. Trillion. Trillion dollars. By the way, the amount of tax revenue we take in on a yearly basis is about $3.5 trillion. So it's almost like an entire year worth of tax revenue. So that stimulus was the pathetic $1,200 checks, which we talked about before, and the bailouts for the companies that did stock buybacks and all that stuff. So yesterday, Trump got on Twitter and he said, we're going to spend $2 trillion more dollars on infrastructure. So he says rates are zero. So we're going to borrow $2 trillion more dollars. We're going to spend it on infrastructure. And okay. The infrastructure in the United States is bad. It's arguably worse than pretty much any developed country in the world. And we do need to spend money on that. And yes, interest rates are low, but we just spent $2 trillion. We're going to spend another, I don't get it. So now, I guarantee you this is what's coming next. People are going to say, well, if we're spending $2 trillion on stimulus and we're spending $2 trillion on infrastructure, then we can spend $2 trillion for giving student loans. It's actually less. It's $1.6 trillion. That's what people are going to say. And then we're going to do more stimulus. This is adding up. It's, like I said, it's crazy. So here's the key point, okay? Now everybody wants to spend all this money, and the question I have is, what is going to happen to taxes? Okay, because you could raise taxes to 100% on everybody, and it doesn't pay for this stuff. I'm serious. If you do the math, if you raise taxes to 100% on every single person, it doesn't pay for this stuff. So what's going on here is basically we're going to be borrowing an unlimited amount of money. And ordinarily when the government borrows a huge amount of money, it puts pressure on the bond market and interest rates go up. So that's usually what happens, is that interest rates start to go up. Except we don't want interest rates to go up. So Trump is going to ask the Federal Reserve to print money to buy treasury bonds to keep interest rates down. So what is essentially happening here is that the Federal Reserve will be directly monetizing the debt. You got to learn that phrase. It's called monetizing the debt. They're printing money to buy the debt, and the Fed is using the bond market as a conduit and is directly financing the federal government. This is bad. So it's called a direct monetization of the debt. Now, has this happened anyplace else in the world in history? Has this ever happened before? Well, I'm glad you asked. It actually has happened 3 other times in history, and actually maybe 4. Weimar Germany, and Zimbabwe, and Venezuela, and to a lesser extent, Argentina. So these are all places that had massive amounts of inflation or hyperinflation. Those are the only other times in history that this has been done. And this is what we're going to be doing. And it's not good. It's not good. And so now you're saying that, well, the crazy guy on the radio says we're going to have hyperinflation. Well, maybe, it's probably going to take a while. It's probably not going to happen today. It's probably not going to happen in 3 years, maybe 5 to 10 years. It takes a long time for that stuff to happen. But that is the path that we are on. And I don't see us getting off that path. I don't see an end to this. So getting back to the tax argument, what's crazy is if the Federal Reserve is directly financing the government, then taxes actually don't matter. It doesn't matter where you set taxes because the government isn't dependent on tax revenue to finance itself. So taxes could be anything. They could be low, they could be medium, they could be high. And then where you put taxes is really a function of your ideology. It's what you believe about inequality and all that stuff. And that's the only thing that really determines what your tax rate should be. Man, I just, I never thought I would see the day, But anyway, this is an economic philosophy. It's actually a philosophy, believe it or not. It's called MMT, Modern Monetary Theory. I don't know why we call it modern. We should call it BMT. We should call it Backwards Monetary Theory. So, and some of this, there's some really smart economists who are in favor of this. And you know what happens when you have really smart people in charge? Have you ever heard of the term Smidiot? I love this term, Smidiot. Smidiot stands for smart idiot. Somebody who is so smart that they're an idiot. These are the people who come up with this stuff. It's just debt monetization. It's not an economic philosophy. It's not. It's dumb. So I am not in charge. And if I were in charge, this would not be happening. You are also not in charge. So we have to figure out how to survive under these circumstances. Because by the time all is said and done, we could be spending $10 trillion. Now, I think in the short term, this is going to do some damage to the bond market. Because in the short term, the Fed isn't really monetizing the debt yet. So I don't think the bond market is going to be able to handle this kind of supply. The answer obviously is gold, right? You can't print gold. You can print dollars, but you can't print gold. And we're really not mining a lot of gold these days. The answer might actually be stocks. In each of those cases that I mentioned, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Weimar, Germany, the stock market went up a lot because stocks are actually an inflation hedge. I like to call them an inflation pass-through vehicle. So if prices are going up, companies earn more money and stocks go up. That's usually how it works. But the answer is not bonds. The answer might be real estate. The answer is probably not cash, although we're going to keep some cash around just in case. By the way, the biggest advocate for this, and this was a big fuss a couple of years ago. Bernie Sanders had an economic advisor. Her name was Stephanie Kelton. She worked on the 2016 campaign. And she is the biggest proponent of MMT. And the irony of this is that she is a far left economist. And her policies are being co-opted by a right-wing president. I'm Jared Dillian. This is The Jared Dillian Show.
Jared Dillian. Now you know a rich guy.